For those of you who are here, we're going to do our very first feedback stream. This is going to be something that we are going to be doing from now on. We have Stevem here for the first run, and he's got quite a bit of experience, and so his feedback is something that we should all probably learn from, I think, even those of us who have also been doing this for a while. So without any further ado, I'll let Stevem take it away from here.
All right. So hi guys. I'll just give you a quick rundown of what I'm going to do. I've got the 5 tracks that have been submitted in the playlist. I'm going to go through each one of them. We'll listen to the entire track. I'll make a few comments. I've made some notes. If you catch me looking away from the camera, it's because I'm looking at my notes over there. Before I start, I've got 2 instances of span loaded. And if I just play a little bit of one of the tracks without you hearing it, what you'll see is the one on the left is giving a very granular snapshot of every moment in time, what frequencies we're seeing. And the one on the right is a much, much slower one. It's sort of averaging out and smoothing out all the frequencies. And the reason that I like to do this is that on this one, you can sort of see, I use this more on individual tracks when I'm working on a track. You can see the actual frequency content of a single track. And this is a great way of looking at the overall picture of what the track looks like, evened out over time. So if you have something that just spikes up momentarily, it will not cause a huge dip or spike here, but it will over here. And I'm going to be referencing a couple of things in the tracks using the 2 instances there. Other than that, I think we're ready to go. So I'm going to unmute the first track and let's take a listen. So what I liked about the intro in particular, it's very nice, it's very wide, it's very atmospheric. There's a great build-up going on here. I like the string parts. This is a question for AJ, and it's not necessarily there's a right or a wrong, but I hear the strings in the background there, and I think to myself, they do sound a little bit programmed. But given the fact that this sounds like it's more of an electronic track, that doesn't necessarily matter. It doesn't sound to me like a symphony orchestra, but I don't know if it's really supposed to. I don't know if AJ wants to say something about that. Otherwise, I'll just press play.
He says he never really thought about that. I don't think he has his mic.
Oh, right, no mic. Okay, fine. So that's just an observation, something maybe to wonder about. You know, do I care that it doesn't sound like it's being played by a symphony orchestra? I don't think it matters in this case, but it's something I picked up on when I'm listening. So it's about this point that I started noticing that you've got issues with your phase. Let's just go back a little bit when the build-up starts here. And watch there. And now watch what happens if I turn down the stereo width. There seems to be an awful lot that's going missing when I do that. I think the fact that your phase correlation is showing up here, and it's if I solo the sides, it sounds really nice. But if I bounce it down to mono, and this is something It's Clipping was talking about recently, it suggests that there might be an issue with the stereo width of the mix here. I really like the atmospherics though. So what I really liked about the part here is it opens up really nicely. If you were watching the frequency response, you'll have seen suddenly there's an awful lot more high-end content that wasn't there before. It's opened up. Before that, I wondered, and again, it's probably artistic preferences and something to maybe just ask yourself, is it too claustrophobic? At some point around here, there's a choir that comes in. And at that point, everything sounds quite condensed. It's quite packed in a very small space. On the other hand, the fact that it opens up afterwards and gives us a sort of release from that sense of claustrophobia is very effective. It might not be something you want to change, but I would think about it as something to at least take a look at and ask yourself the question, is this what I want to do? I like the arrangement. I like the way that you've used the dynamics very effectively. You've gone into what was obviously a climax here, and you've taken it all away. And that sense of claustrophobia is definitely gone now. You've counterbalanced it, and that really works for me. I really like that. And I also like the way that there's obviously a build-up coming. We're just beginning to hear the start of it, and let's see where the track goes. So I really like where it's gone at the end. I like the overall structure of the track. I like the use of dynamics in there. At the end, I think that you do not need that sidechain on your kick. I'm not a huge fan personally, so there could be some personal preference play in here, into this here. But if you've been watching the EQs, you'll have noticed your kick drum's the only thing down in the bass. So you don't need to create any space for that bass drum. What's essentially happening is you're just turning down the rest of the track. And we can actually hear that kind of quite well, I think somewhere around here. If we go in, I'm just going to zoom in on about 3000 hertz. You can really hear it sort of going down, but it's not the kick coming through. It's just the overall volume of your track going down. Now, I understand why you might want to do that if you're making a dance track. I question whether it was the right choice to do in this case, because I think given the name of the track, it's ambient, the main focal point of this track seems to me to be the background. It seems to be the synth. It seems to be the build up from start to finish over the course of the track, and that the kick really just comes in to add a sense of bombast and fill up everything so that there's an obvious climax. There's a real sense of drive to the track. It's going somewhere. It's not there to make the track danceable. So I would question whether that choice is one that you actually needed to make. I don't think you did. You might disagree with me. Anyway, I think it's something you just want to think about and see how you do it. Overall, I really like the track. I really like the use of dynamics. As I said before, it's just the dynamics here doesn't do anything for me. And we were talking about this just before we started the actual stream. We were talking about what's your vision, and do the choices you've made in your track serve that vision. So is the vision here a sort of dance floor banger with the kick being the central focus of the instrument, or is it more ambient? And my personal feeling is that the answer to that question is no, the kick is not the most important element. It's not force to the floor club banger. And that's why I would definitely look to question this. Anyway, great track. I don't know if anyone else wants to add something to that, or if there's any comments in the chat.
Well, people really liked it, that's for sure. A lot of comments on basically just a bunch of praise and hype. I think AJ is typing something out right now, so we'll see. Maybe as a response to what your closing comments there. So let's see what he has to say.
Yeah, it's a great track. I like it.
Sal is asking about, I think, what you meant by an equation.
An equation? What did I say about an equation? I don't remember that.
I think he mistyped. Oh, Maths is typing an equation. Okay, never mind. Sorry, Steven.
Okay, does that mean do we still have something to cover here? Do we want to move on to the next track?
Sorry. Yeah, he finally got his statement typed out. So he says, "Lol, yeah, it's def not kick focused. The kick was an energy booster, and I definitely could clear out the side chain in the highs."
And you don't really need it in the lows because it's the only thing there anyway, really. I mean, the way I'm seeing it and hearing it. So, but it's a great track. Shall we move on to the next one then? Because we've got our resident pad masher experts track.
Yes, sir.
DCJ's Rowdy Revels.
Rowdy Revels. The naming.
So the first time I listened to this track, I don't know how it is for people who maybe haven't heard it before. I'm listening to this and I'm thinking it's a little bit of a jazzy inspired cinematic tune. And then the drums come in and it's going somewhere completely different. Now, obviously, the track itself is pretty short, but the one thing that I was wondering was this part here where you bring in the wubs. The wubs sound kind of pretty gritty, pretty nice. I question whether the rhythm right at the end there was the right one. Let me play it again so you can hear what it sounds like, and then I'm going to do my best beatbox attempt to do some, So it's boop boop bob wop wop boop boop wop wop bop bop wop wop bop bop, something like that. And the last one I felt should be wop 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 or something different. I didn't feel it sounds to me almost like in hip hop when you've got a record scratch going. Yeah. Yep. The same sort of rhythmic thing, and right at the end of there, I would expect it to be, it's the fill, right? Yep. And it sounds like it's just a continuation of the same thing, especially because after we have that one, we go somewhere completely different. I really like those pitch falling down synth things on the side. Really love that. I wondered, and I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to this question, whether having a sort of octave old school drum and bass line running underneath the wubs might not give it a little bit more oomph, for want of a better word. I'm not sure it needs it. I'm just hearing it because I really liked that music back when it was, you know, the thing. Because I'm hearing a sort of, there's a bass underneath everything that's going wop, 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 or something similar to that.
I got you.
And in the good old days, it always went up sort of an octave. It was and maybe you have some notes in between as it jumps up and down. And I really always liked that. So if this were my track, it'd be the first thing I'd do. Put a jumpy bass line in there in the lows. You know, not something with a lot of frequency content. It's supposed to be a little bit out of the way because your wubs are the central thing. You asked a question about where should this go when you posted it. Now, I don't know if I really have the answers to that because this isn't something I would normally make. But my gut feeling says you need more wubs and you want to render them out as audio and you want to chop them up and you want to treat them like an amen break and just throw it all over the place and see what happens and have a little bit more movement in the wubs itself, or a little bit more variation by having different sounds that you piece together. There's been a lot of music recently that is very disjointed and quite interesting in that melodies aren't written using notes. Melodies are written using different timbres of things that have been chopped up and stuck together. Do you know what I'm talking about when I say that?
Yep. Yeah.
And that's what I would do. If you wanted a director to take it, render out some of these things as audio, chop them up, mess with them, mangle them, make it manic, make it fun. The other thing that I found myself wondering is, are your hi-hats too loud? Let's just play it, and I'm going to go in here. And take out the top. Has the track really lost anything by not having the hi-hats being sort of much louder than the other parts?
Nope.
I also wondered, but it fits the style, but did you go a little hard on possibly limiting the snare? It sounds like it's been flattened a little bit. If it does probably fit the style though. Things I wondered to myself.
Yeah. Nice. Those are all your notes?
That's pretty much it, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That hi-hat thing is actually that's a great thing to point out, because I mean, just overall, like I said, this is completely new. I used to just make fun of neuro, like people who are making, you know, neuro basses and blah blah blah. And then I don't know, I felt like I needed a challenge. Most of the neuros I created were trash. And I actually did this one and was like, this one's kind of cool. Let me just put some drums under and see what that sounds like. And then instead of letting the neuro play through, I just kind of hit it, you know, so this really came together as a playing field to experiment with the neuro I created. And then I added the intro after the fact. So it wasn't, there wasn't too much thought put into, but then once it was done, it was like, okay, maybe I can take it somewhere. And that timing thing that you heard before the drums drop, which is, you know, I wasn't sure about at all, but I was just like, all right, well, I gotta have an intro and then I gotta get into this place. It's actually I resampled the neuro that you hear with the drums, and I, at the end, just pitched it up to give you like a, wait, what's happening before the bass drops. So it's meant to be intentionally a curveball and then to just slap you with it. Whether that's effective or not, I'm not sure. And it was just like, all right, let's just try this and throw it out there and see. And the drums are slammed. Like the drums are soft clipped, and then the bus is clipped. It's like, and then the whole track is clipped. So that's, you know,
which is probably something that is actually fair game where you're doing D&B
for this style. Yeah,
you take your drum loop and you're putting it through some stuff, but you're cranking the volume on that. The difference being that you've taken a recording of, in many cases, an actual drum kit in an actual room from an actual record that wasn't squashed to smithereens. But you're putting way too much gain in it to get that effect and give it that punch.
Yeah. I think I could pull back the snare in general. Like the processing I'm happy with, but I think that the snare could pull back, and the hi-hats as well. Now that I'm hearing, which I didn't think of, but the snare, I always thought about that. And the thing you said about the chopping up is exactly the idea I had, is which I think is what this style of music is. That pitch drop thing you heard. I mean, this is only 2 patches in Serum once the drums hit. It's the Nero, which is 1 patch, and then the is 1 patch in Serum that I made, and I tried to make sure I sound designed everything, even the stuff in the beginning, just because that's kind of the Nero way. So it's only 2 patches. So I have been putting together one shots to throw in, like on the next part. Like I think I would leave it empty like this, and then on the next part throw in stuff in between, maybe lessen the wubs and maybe switch to like a low bass, like you said, and then have noisy bits in between, like just chopped and thrown in.
Yeah, it definitely needs to go somewhere, but
it
definitely has that feel of, here's something I threw together and I thought it was pretty cool. And what do I do now?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Awesome.
But do something with it, because I like it.
Awesome. Thank you, Steven.
Has anyone else got something to say? Or shall we move on to the next track, which I really, really like? And I think Turtle has actually joined us now. Am I correct?
Yes, Turtle's with us.
She's here, yep.
Does Turtle have a mic?
I think she has it, but whether she wants to use it or not.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair enough.
Right, that's the tricky part. Yeah, she's not going to be talking.
Okay.
So. Nah.
There is one question that I have, but I'm sure you can type in answers to that too. Did you guys want to say something, or should I press play?
Yep, go for it, man.
All right. I really, really, really like this track. I am a huge fan of the vocal gasps. I love the way that they've been used as if they were a rhythmic instrument, but they're not traditional percussion in any sense, but they give a sense of movement, they give a sense of motion, they give a sense of drive. The other thing that I noticed while listening to the second version, and you can see that I've got another version in here, is the first version had a very, very boomy guitar part, and I'm going to play it to you. I know Turtle's going to hate me for this, but I think it's worth listening to and comparing the difference between the two. So I'm just going to go back and play a little bit from the beginning, and I'm going to hop between these two versions. So when I first heard this, we actually discussed this, and my feeling was I presume that what's happened is the mic has been pointed at the sound hole. If I quickly grab a guitar, something like that is what I'm presuming that's happened. So there's the hole and the mic's being pointed straight at it, and that invariably creates a big, big boomy bottom end. And so my suggestion was, what I like to do is to take the mic and point it sort of at the 12th fret, a little bit away from the the sound hole and at a distance of 1 foot or 30 centimeters, somewhere around that range, pointing it at the 12th fret. I don't know if that's what Turtle did, but that low end definitely got cleared up.
She said, "Yep."
And it sounds an awful lot better, in my opinion, for having done that. It's really interesting how much of a difference it can make, how you set your mic up. It's the same instrument, it's the same mic, but it's in a different position, and suddenly you've got a completely different sound, and you've solved your problem. You don't need to take an EQ to it, you just need to record it right. And there's a lesson in there for all of us, because we've all, if we work with real instruments, not like Angr, say, if we work with real instruments, we've all had that problem that we've recorded something and we're trying to fix it with EQ and so on, and half the time, just re-record it, get it right, and don't make the same mistake the next time, and everything's going to be great. So let's get back to the track. So I like the progression. I like the use of the piano. I do feel that the piano sounds what I would call noodly. It reminds me of what happens when I sit down at a piano and I go, "Ooh, I wonder what this will sound like." And it sounds kind of nice, and you think, I'm going to record that so that I don't forget it. But I wonder if it couldn't do with a little bit more shape. And what do I mean by that? I mean that there's maybe a motif in there or a line in there that forms the basis of the noodling. Not saying you can't add stuff in and so on, but it does have a little bit of that, oh, there's a piano, I'm going to go and play it, sound to it. And there's actually a piano bit that comes in later that I find sounds a lot better. I like the idea of it. I just feel that you need to take that idea and play it a few times until you found which are the best bits, what are the great ideas, what are the little phrases that should definitely be in there. Build something around that and re-record it. That would be what I would like to do with that little section. I'm really liking the overall feel of this track. It's my music. I like it. Now, that piano line there, where it goes, this is sort of nicely jazzy, and there's a couple of in-between notes that are adding that spice. That's good. I really like that part. It's got a little bit less form, maybe, and does have that noodle, but it's going in a place that it just feels right. So just to be clear, when I say that there's another piano part that I like the chords here. They're not the melodic part that I'm referencing, but you can see here that we have a lot more rigid form in the track. The piano is just sort of playing along like that. We're going to get to the bit that I was talking to in a second. I find that has phrases in it that sound a lot more structured. Diddle-diddle-ding, rest, do-do-do-do-ding, diddle-ding-ding. And I would like to see a little bit more of that in the first part of the track where the pianos first come in. Quick question, is that a shaker that's just come in? I like the way that the tambourines come in and added that high frequency content and given a bit more spread to the frequencies. And then there's the shaker or something very similar that comes in just a little bit later. It's hidden off in the side, but it's creating that sense of movement, and the gasps were doing that earlier, but now we've actually got real percussion coming in and doing that. So question to Turtle, was that a shaker? What was that?
She says it's a type of shaker, and
Right.
she's going to get a picture for us.
Oh, very nice. So, as I said, I really like this track. I've made a lot of notes about it. Things that I do like, things that I think could maybe do with a quick look at. At the end, we had a kick come in, and it sometimes is playing a double hit. Tuk tuk, tuk tuk. It sounded like a heartbeat. It's very nice. It's very tender. It works well with the track. The whole track itself is very soulful. There's some sort of jazzy, bluesy influences in the piano there that I very much like. As said, I think there's a section around here that could do with a little bit more form, but the idea is great. It works. There's a nice sense of progression over the course of the track. You can see it in the waveform. There's a lot more going on here. The triangle, the tambourine and the shaker they open it up. They give a very full sense at the end, even though it's quite sedate. It hasn't changed the mood of the track, but it has changed the listening experience. The point about the piano isn't so much a criticism as more an observation of where I feel that the track currently is in terms of evolution of a track. I think the overall shape of the track is there, the overall progression of the track is there, and now it's that stage where you might want to go back and look at things that you've done and see, do I want to do another take on that? Do I want to change something there? And making it flow as a whole, looking at the big picture. Because the other thing that I did feel was after we'd had the piano interlude, and it's probably somewhere around here, the track kind of goes back to where it was before. And doesn't have anything really new added to it, where you'd think, this might be an opportunity to bring something else in that's subtle in the background, just so it's, it's the evolution. If you're calling it Diaries of a Girl, and each one of these parts is a day or an entry in the journal, what is it about this entry that distinguishes it from the one before? And the other thing I did wonder, and this is about the mix, is those wonderful gasps that come in. Because there's nothing up in the top frequency area, I wonder if you want to put a little bit more air on the gasps themselves so that breathiness is coming out. It'll sound probably pretty good. Let's see if I can find that. That's not the one. I personally really like the way that brings out the very top end of the voice. Obviously, I wouldn't do it on the actual master bus itself. I might go in and look at the take itself and see if I can't just boost a high shelf somewhere. I mean, here I put it at 5.8K, but you'd want to give it a listen and see what it sounds like. It might help fill out the track a little bit earlier too. Is there anything else? I think that's pretty much it, but I think it's fabulous. I would like to see this being worked on. I'd like to see a little bit more refining on the piano, and then I want to hear another version. I love it.
So she did have a couple of comments in there. I didn't want to. You had a good flow going, so I didn't want to jump in and interrupt. But she appreciates that you get her music. That was one thing, and the shaker picture you're gonna have to definitely check because it's pretty amazing what it is.
Okay.
It looks like it was lovingly handcrafted. It's a beautiful piece of equipment.
Oh,
and she says thank you with exclamation point on there. So.
I'm just looking at it.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
Yeah, wow. I wasn't expecting something like that. That does explain why it doesn't sound quite like a shaker, but a bit like a shaker. Wow, that's cool. Oh.
Yeah, so she just appreciates feeling understood, like I think we all do, whenever anybody gets us, and so yeah, I think she's pretty happy with that.
It's a fabulous track, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who thinks that.
You're dang right.
Next up, we have Droppop. This is going to be fun. So let's give that a listen. Oh, I have a question before I press play. Are you guys getting crackling from the audio in FL Studio?
It's not crackling. It's broken up a little bit for me. Like it sometimes speeds up and slows down, and I think it's just because of streaming, but not actual crackling.
I've got just the odd thing where it sounds like it might have skipped, so I'm just going to...
Yeah, it skips sometimes, but I think, I don't know how avoidable that is with the streaming stuff. It doesn't ruin it, though. It's still...
Okay, doesn't matter then. I think it's just a streaming too. Okay, let's move on then. So, I love the vocal chops. I've always been a fan of the sort of playing around with vocals. I used to do that an awful lot. I haven't done it anywhere near as much as I used to. I like the use of delay on them. I like the rhythmic changes that they have that keep it interesting. And I like the way that we transition. I'll just go back and play that. We transition into the next part. So let's go back. And there's another vocal chop that's come in the part here, and it's complementing the original one really well. You've got an established motif, you've got another layer on top of it. This is an absolute banger. And I think it's really clever to use vocal samples because everybody's brain is hardwired to hone in on the human voice. And if you put it in your tracks, it just immediately gets people's attention. And the way that this is crafted with one layer coming in, it's playing rhythmic games, it's making you go, oh, what's that? And then another one comes in. It's very, very smart songwriting. So I'm sorry to stop that there. We'll go back and listen to that transition again in a minute. But I just wanted to say, I think everyone could learn something from the way the intro to this is crafted. It's got a lot going for it. It might be a little long in the grand scheme of things at 1 minute, but by keeping everything interesting, having that variation, having those things that hook into you and make you want to listen to it, it can get away with it. So listen to it and learn from it, I would say. So let's go and listen to this transition again, because it's now going to go into what is looking like a real banger with the sausage waveform.
I'm going wild!
So high energy, there's a lot going on. We've sacrificed a little bit of the should I say, subdued nature of the intro with the fun and games for being a little bit more hard and in your face here. That's great. It's time for some high energy action. Now, I think that those laser sounds are too loud. They're sort of poking out on one of the EQs. I think it's around 2K. And I've actually, when I was listening to this track, I went and I made my own EQ curve because I felt that overall I might want to change things. I can't obviously take down just the laser sound. And there's other stuff going on in there. So before I play it with the EQ on, let's just hone in on that section that I'm talking about and see what I'm hearing. Now, I'm hearing the laser sound occupying this space and being an awful lot louder than anything else that's in that space. And I don't think it needs to be that loud. I think it's going to stick out and poke through anyway. It's forming a spike on the frequency analyzer as well. It's not a huge deal because I actually think it adds something to the track, but I just find myself thinking I don't think it needs to be that loud to get the same effect. If I put an EQ on it and try and take those frequencies out, I'm going to take out a lot of the other stuff, unfortunately. We can give it a quick listen what it sounds like though. I don't feel we've really lost anything by taking this area around the 2K out, and suggests to me it's probably just too loud in the mix. Other than that, I'm really liking it though. So let's go back to where we were and let this play out. Okay, abrupt ending. It doesn't sound like it's been rendered with the remainder there, which I don't know if there's even more coming after this. Abrupt cut, something went wrong there. But that aside, it's a banger. I do like it. You can tell from the waveform that there's quite a bit of limiting or something going on here. My question to Droppop would be, do you need that much? You probably want some because of the genre and the way that these things tend to sound, but would it be possible to reach similar energy levels with slightly less limiting. And I think it would be for the simple fact that there's some things that are too loud in the mix, in my opinion, of course, and that if you were to take them down, it would just mean that you've got a lower dB overall, and you will be triggering that limiter less. But it will still have the same overall impact by doing that. So that's one question. The other one, I don't hear it on my headphones, but I did hear it when I was listening on my monitors, which made me write the note, is the kick itself compressed too much? I'm not sure about that because I haven't heard it now and I haven't listened to the track for a day. I made that note. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But absolute banger of a track. Love the way that there's dynamics. It's got quiet parts here, it's got quiet parts here, it's got a fantastic intro, and when it does get going, it's in your face, it's nasty, it's just the way it needs to be. Anyone want to add something to that?
AJ and I were agreeing in the chat that if Droppop were here, he would probably say, no, it needs more. It needs to be turned up more. he's very sausage oriented. So,
and it is part of the sound of the genre. So if that's your vision, that is your vision, and that's absolutely valid. I think personally that you could probably achieve similar loudness levels with less of it. And one of the interesting things that I noticed, obviously it wasn't very scientific, but when I was prepping this project, I actually tried to balance the levels sort of the same so that Turtle's track isn't half as loud as everyone else's. And I noticed that I'd actually turned down Rowdy Revels more than I turned down Droppop's track, even though if you look at the waveforms, you think that this is the sausage one. And that's what makes me think that there might be some mileage in there in the mix itself. Because your track, DCJ, actually sounds louder, but looks like it shouldn't. And I think that's because you've probably spread the load a little bit better. So, last track on the list is Inferno's track. I'm going to be quite honest with you guys, it's not my kind of music, but I did quite enjoy it nonetheless. So let's give it a listen. So the first thing I noticed, and I know you're not supposed to be mixing with your eyes or anything like that, but the first thing I noticed when I played this track was there's a really nice slope on the analyzer here where it's louder in the bass and there's a very slight slope down to the high frequencies. You'll see it again when I press play. I've just paused it so I can talk. It sounds like it's well mixed and I don't see any huge issues anywhere. So there's an interesting meter going on here. I'm wondering if those vinyl crackles are a little bit on the loud side. After having said the mix sounds great, they came in and my ear immediately jumps to them. And that can often be a sign that it's not embedded in the mix quite right. It's probably not the sort of sound that you want the listener to be focusing on. It's more of a sort of a vibe thing. So I wonder if those crackles aren't just a little loud, maybe. So there's these synths that keep coming in. They're going wow, and it's just one note sort of being faded in and with a little bit of movement on it. It should therefore be a very boring part because it's just one note and it's the sort of same thing all over the time, but it's really nice texture painting. It's serving the song really well because there's quite a lot of complexity and quite a lot going on already. It's just adding another layer. So you've got this sort of more complex background where there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of interesting rhythmic games being played with the track, and then there's this just one sound that kind of sets the mood and sets the tone and keeps things just that little bit grounded. And it's continuing through there. It's sort of tying the parts together. We've had a change in the overall structure of the track, but that is still there and giving us a feeling of continuity. So, as I was saying before, you've got a melody of sorts, I guess, with the synths there. But because there's complicated stuff going in the background, it's a good choice to not overcomplicate things. And the harmonic structure, in and of itself, has remained relatively simple beforehand. We've taken that beat away, and suddenly it's been flipped on its head. There's interesting extended chords coming in here. There's a couple of key modulations, I think. But by removing that complex layer that was there with the rhythm and so on, and allowing us to just focus on the harmonic elements, we've substituted one complexity for another. I think having the two layered together would be overkill, would be too much. It would, what am I focusing on? Everything's going in different directions. But like this, there's method to the madness, I guess. It's taken a very nice turn and very different mood, but it fits. So I'm guessing that was some tempo automation at the end, going a bit here and a bit there. Now, we get to the one thing that I did hear in this track where I question it. As much as I appreciated the way the instruments had been integrated with the beat before that, right here, right at the end, there's a lead synth that comes in. And I'll play it again in a minute so you can just listen to it again. And there is no rests at all. That lead synth is playing from when it comes in to when it finishes without taking a pause, without breath. One note ends, the next one begins. And I found myself thinking that that was really at odds with everything that had come before and was happening now. I'm not saying it needs to be stop-start or anything, but rests are fundamental to rhythm. They're one of the most important notes that you can have, if you can have a rest as a note, if you know what I mean. And they get underestimated a lot. So it's now gone through there constantly without breaking up. Let's listen to it again. I think you'll hear what I mean. So I found myself wondering, should there maybe be a little bit more interest in the rhythm of that one lead sound? but beyond that, I don't think there's very much that I can suggest for this track. While it's not my kind of music, I can totally appreciate the technical skill that's gone into it. It is a pretty cool track, and I'm sure there's people here who think, oh, that's my music, that's my favorite track. It's not mine, but that's just the way it is. Everyone's got their different tastes. I still like the track from a technical point of view. I just probably wouldn't put it in a playlist. So great mix, I think. I love the use of the textures as the compositional element. It makes the track very interesting. It ties it together. It gives it continuity. And it's got an interesting rhythmic structure. It's got an interesting meter. It sounded like the tempo had been automated over the course of the track. Lots of movement there. But by virtue of not being a fall to the floor banger with 4 chords, it's probably not going to have the same mass market appeal as some of the other tracks have. That's pretty much it. Anyone want to add something to that?
Yeah, I actually just wanted to point out that it speaks volumes, really, that you would specifically mention that, hey, this isn't really my type of music, but I actually really enjoyed this, and you had a lot of a lot of interesting points to add in there, because it's one of the things that I really have always liked about Inferno's music is that, I don't think that I have a single playlist that has anything like that on it anywhere, or if anyone else is even producing that, I'm not sure. But every single time he's dropped something, I've really appreciated his just how easy it is for him to pull people in, because he really just does have an ear for things.
And it gives you an interesting perspective on music when you hear something that might not fit in with what you've been listening to before. It can open up your mind to new ideas, even if you don't necessarily want to make exactly that. It's something that you'll take and you'll put into your own tracks. I remember going to Morocco, and I got, actually, is it around here? I got a darbuka, which I can't actually play properly, but it was really fun listening to the music there and joining in with the other musicians. They just sit on the street and they'd be banging the drums, and you could just sort of join in. And they're not playing 4/4. They're just grooving, and you're coming from a Western perspective, and at the beginning you're sort of, it's a bit alien, it's a bit weird, it's hard to find your voice. But you do it a few times and it becomes the way you're now hearing music. And as you walk through this other culture and you're hearing that music everywhere, you're not thinking anything of it. The unfortunate thing was, after coming back to Western music, fall to the floor pop, I lost it. I couldn't just pick it up now and go back to playing African drum beats. But I think there's something that you take from these things that goes into your music, even if you aren't doing exactly the same thing, right? It opens up your mind.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So is there anything else we want to discuss? Any questions that have come in?
Well, so just generally, we had a couple of questions. We had one that was something that you and I had talked about in DMs, which was how do I get my track on here? And so I told folks, and for anybody listening, submit to the feedback exchange. Go in there, give your feedback to one or more people in there, and then drop your track, and it might be selected. And I half jokingly said to Artisans, who's one of our newest boosters, that boosting doesn't hurt your chances. So I think maybe that could be one of our perks for boosters, is that maybe they have a little favoritism on that, because they are helping our server out a lot. So, but that was one. And then another one, we had people ask, is this going to be recorded? And yeah, we're definitely recording it. And Steven is going to make that available when he gets a chance. And I'm sure we'll get it out to everybody the same way that we got the announcement out about the stream. So
yeah, let's just hope I haven't screwed that up. But I'm seeing a 1 hour 6 recording in the bottom left of my screen, which is a good sign. So One thing I
Yeah.
would like to say about the submissions, because we were talking about what was the method for choosing the submissions. I think if we do something like this again, it would be really great to have a couple of tracks from people who are maybe not as accomplished in terms of they've been working at it for a couple of months or a year or so, and they're still finding their feet. Because I think that there's going to be more people in the server who are starting out and looking for advice than there are people who maybe have found their own way and know how to go about these things. So there might be more value to more people if we do that.
Yep, absolutely. I agree. And I think there was only 3 of us or 4 of us here at the very beginning when I was saying this, but this one was supposed to be kind of a special hook, where you guys kind of recognize a lot of the people that were on the lineup, and people that are mods or who have been here just for ever and a day, like Droppop has been here and been in the feedback channel for just ever. But from now on, yeah, it's going to be a little more focused on stuff where we have some really interesting feedback to give, and so I'm probably going to over submit to you, or to whoever's doing the feedback. I think you'll probably be one of our regulars for sure, but whoever's doing the feedback, I'll over submit, and then that'll allow you to kind of pare down to the ones you think are the most interesting to fit into about an hour or so.
Okay. So I would have said that as far as I'm concerned, we're done. It's taken about an hour, which is roughly the time slot that I would have allocated, and I would stop the stream unless anyone else wants to say something.
Subnot says, thank you so much, Stephen. And AJ has a little this arrow there, and Turtle's also thanking you. I think everybody is just really appreciative. That was, yep, Sal and everybody. So yeah, this was great, Stephen. We really appreciate it, man.
I'll go and check out the chat now that we're done. Okay, then thanks everyone for watching. I hope we can do something like this again in the future. Thanks to everyone who joined in with the critique and giving their opinion. DCJ had a couple of things to say. It's great to have this to and fro as well. And with that in mind, if you do submit a track, maybe make sure you have a mic working. And with that, I'd say over and out. See you next time.
Thanks, Stephen. Bye, everybody. Bye.
All right. See you guys.